Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Emmanuel, but you can call me Mr. E, and I'm a community program specialist with the San Mateo County Libraries. Today, I'd like to invite you to learn a little more about science in today's experiments. Raise your hand if you've done a science experiment before. And if you haven't, that's okay. We're all here to learn. This is going to be a safe space where everyone can feel welcome. If you'd like to watch other videos like these, don't forget to visit our library homepage at www.smcl.org. All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to be using different materials, including liquid mixtures known as solutions, making observations and predictions, and learning about a chemical reaction. And if this is the first time you hear all about this, that's totally okay. But before we begin, let's get our energy flowing by doing a quick fun brain energizer. Today's activity is called Find It Fast. I'm going to call it an object, and I want you to find that object in the space or in the room that you're in that matches it. So, ready? Let's get started. So, I want you to find an object that is round. Can you find an object in the room or the space that you're in that is round? I'm gonna go ahead and give you 30 seconds and I'll play some music while you guys find something that is round. All right, so let's get started, starting now. All right, awesome. It looks like you guys found something that was round. So thank you for trying the first one. And if you're having a difficult time finding something, don't forget to ask an adult if they're with you, or you can also ask a sibling, like a brother or sister, or even uncle or grandparent, if they're with you, so that you can find the objects more quickly. You do want, remember, you do want to be safe when you're going to the object, if you're picking it up, to show it to your parent or your sibling, so that you don't hurt yourself or break something. All right, awesome. So the next thing I want you to find is something that has a square shape. Can you find something that has a square shape in the room? Again, I'm going to go ahead and give you 30 seconds, starting now. Awesome. It looks like you guys are doing great in finding an object that is a square, it has a shape of a square. Remember, we were looking for something that has the shape of a square. Next, I want you to find a shape that looks like a rectangle. Can you find a shape in the room or the space that you're in that has the shape of a rectangle? Again, you're gonna have 30 seconds. This is my example of what I found around me that has the shape of a rectangle. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and give you 30 more seconds, starting now. Great, it looks like you guys are getting the hang of it. The last thing we're gonna go and find is a shape that has a smooth surface. Can you find an object that has a smooth surface. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give you 30 seconds, starting now. Awesome. It looks like you guys are doing great with the activity. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. I want to thank you for participating or for playing the game. I hope you enjoyed it. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the vocabulary that I want you to consider or remember when we're doing the experiment. So here, I'm going to go ahead and share one more screen. So again, today's activity is called the bouncing chemistry. I'm Mr. E. And some of the words that I want you to remember while we're doing the activity are the following. So the first one is a prediction. And a prediction is just an educated guess for what is going to happen. So if you are mixing something, you can predict or you can try to guess what's going to happen before you even mix a solution or mix something together. And that's just a way that you can, think about what you think is going to happen. Okay? Observations is the action or process of observing something carefully in order to gain information. So this is where you normally write down notes as to what is happening to something as it's mixing or as you're mixing it or you're adding things together. You want to pay attention to what is happening in the moment that you're doing it. Another word that you're going to hear is the word solution. And solution is a liquid mixture like water, glue, anything that has a liquid state. And next word is dissolve. And dissolve means to become part of a liquid by breaking down. So if you think about salt being poured into a glass of water, when you pour the salt, it's going to break down or it's going to dissolve in the water and it's going to become part of it. So those are some of the words. Next, we have the word molecule, and molecule is just a group of atoms that make up everything in the world around us. So even though you may not see the molecules, we are being surrounded by molecules of oxygen that help us or keeps us alive. Okay? And here you have one example of like hydrogen atoms being in mixing together with, in this case, oxygen to make water, or what we know, what we call as water. The next word is chemical reaction, and that's a process of rearranging these molecules into a substance or a new substance. So if you recall, like today's activity is called bouncing chemistry. So we're going to be creating a new substance, and this material is called a polymer. And a polymer is a material whose molecules are all very similar and have bonded together by mixing, the different molecules together. Okay, so let's go ahead and review the materials that we're going to be using for the activity. So you should see on the screen for the bouncing chemistry, we are going to be needing a few things. We're going to need 1/4 of a cup of baking soda. We're also going to be needing 2 teaspoons of water, 3 tablespoons of school glue, 2 plastic containers, 1 drop of food coloring, although this is optional if you do want to give it a nice color to your experiment. We're also going to be using either popsicle sticks or tongue depressors, or you can even use a metal spoon to mixing the different solutions. If you have a mold that is circular, you can also use old yogurt carts or the containers to pour in the substance that we're going to be using for the experiment. We're also going to be needing a piece of aluminum foil. And always, when you are mixing different things, you want to have an adult with you to support you. Okay? All right, so let me just go back to my screen, and I'm going to show you the different materials that we're going to be using. All right, so this is all of the items that you see on this table that we're going to be using. We said that we were going to be needing some baking soda, so I have it here. Not sure if you've ever seen baking soda, but it is a very fine material. So, it kind of looks like sand, but a little more fine, or a little more fine. It is white. It is very powdery, so it is a powder. It's usually used in baking, like when they bake bread, or when they cook, different types of cakes. They do use baking soda. We have the measuring cup. This is 1/4 that we're going to be using this to measure our baking soda. Now we also have the container. So this is what mine looked like. You can use all kinds of containers. It doesn't have to be this big, but this does help with being able to mix whatever we're pouring in and move it from one side to the other. So this is the containers. Here's the ball molds, or the molds that we're going to be using once we start mixing things, and we're going to be pouring the new substance in here. The aluminum foil is for you to use so that you can compare when you're putting in a mixture in the mold versus just leaving it on the foil and letting it sit outside as opposed to being inside the mold. So we're going to be using the aluminum foil for that. We also have a spoon. So this is a teaspoon, and we're going to be using it to pour the water into the mixture of baking soda. And the last thing we have is glue. You can use any kind of glue, but if you've ever used glue to make things stick together, this is a liquid. It's very sticky, and you want to have at least enough so that you can have the solution. So if you remember, there was like three tablespoons that we're going to be using for this. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our container, and we're going to be measuring 1/4 cup of baking soda and adding it to the container. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So take my measuring cup, and I'm going to take 1/4 of the baking soda and pour it into my first container. So you can see it's filled all the way to the top, and I'm going to pour it into my container. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take 2 teaspoons of water and add it to the baking soda. So here's my water. I'm going to take 2 teaspoons. So there's 1. That's 2. And now I'm going to use one of the popsicle sticks to stir the solution until it has completely dissolved. So currently you can see like the water being, not mixed with the baking soda. So what we're doing is we're going to stir it so that both the water and the baking soda make contact. And we're going to stir it enough so that it completely dissolves into a paste. So if you think about the paste, if you ever had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the peanut butter, it's sort of like a paste that you can spread onto the bread. Well, here we're just mixing. Make sure that you are mixing thoroughly in the container, and you go from one side to the other. Okay. Now you can see it in the beginning, it was almost like sand. Now it's clumping, or it's getting like combining to become like little balls or little pebbles, so that the water has combined with the baking soda. So I'm going to continue mixing it for a little bit more so you can see. I'm going to try to get as much of the baking soda that is still sitting at the bottom, that is still in the powder or in the powder state, so that you can mix it enough so that it becomes a paste. Okay. Now, if the solution is not coming together, so you can always pour like a few more drops of water. So I'm going to fill it in here. I think it's pretty good. It is combining, or it is coming together. So the way I know that is by, if I get everything into one side and then I start pushing it, I can actually make sort of like a ball or a more solid object by pushing it in. So I don't think this one needs additional water. Now you're welcome to experiment and try different amounts of water. Like, if you wonder what's going to happen if you pour, double the amount of water, or if you're going to pour half of the water. So in this case, we poured 2 teaspoons. If you want to pour like 4, and then you can make, some observations in terms of what's going to happen when you do that, versus pouring only 1. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as is and see what happens. Okay. Now, the next thing is we're going to measure. I'm going to put on the side, and the next thing we're going to be doing is measuring about 3 tablespoons of school glue. So I'm going to take the school glue, open up the bag, and if you get some glue on the space that you're in, that's not a big deal. You can always clean it. So I'm going to take my teaspoon, and I'm going to get 3 tablespoons in here. So that's 1. That's 2. And finally, this is the 3rd one. So 3 tablespoons. I'm going to let it, I'm going to shake it a little bit so that, okay. And since I already have the spoon here, I'm just going to use that to stir the food coloring. I am going to put a little bit of food coloring. You can start by adding 1 to 3 drops. I'm going to add 3 drops just so that we get a nice color when mixing it with the glue. So here's what I have, and I'm going to pour in 1, 2, 3. Kind of looks like a happy face. Yeah. All right. So after I put in the food coloring, I'm going to go ahead and stir and stir and stir the glue with the food coloring until it had completely combined or mixed with the glue. So this is what it's going to look like once you start combining, you're going to see that the white kind of disappears once it makes contact with the food coloring. So you want to combine, continue mixing it. If you have some on the side of the edge, then you want to make sure you stir enough. Okay. Okay, so I think this is looking pretty good. I'm using red, you can use all kinds of colors for the food coloring. You can ask your parents to see if they have any. Food coloring is a very well-known kitchen ingredient when it comes to preparing, baked goods. So you can always ask your parents if they have some food coloring, and if they don't, that's okay. You don't need to have food coloring to make this experiment work. Okay. So now I'm gonna go ahead and give it a nice pour it. I'm gonna keep all the glue mixed with the food coloring. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the first mixture that we made, and we're going to pour it into the new glue and food coloring mixture that we made. So, okay, so I'm going to take the first container and then add the contents into it. So I'm going to go ahead and pour all of it in here. Yeah. And what I'm going to do now is combine both of these. And essentially what's happening, so once we're pouring the baking soda into the container, eventually it should become a little difficult to stir. You can use your hands to mix it after a while. And essentially what's happening right now is that the molecules in the baking soda are combining with the molecules of the glue. And it's producing a highly flexible polymer that is bonding, or it's bonding similar molecules together. So it's sort of becoming now like a liquid. I don't know if you remember, like the white was like powders of clumps or a baking soda. So this is what I'm getting. All right, so now that we finished combining or mixing this, we're gonna go ahead and pour it into one of the containers here. So, this is like a leftover plastic container. So I'm gonna pour enough so that we can store it, or we can keep it for 24 hours. And then after that, you will see how the mixture for the molecules from the baking soda and the glue will combine and will make a new substance, which is a polymer. So I'm going to go ahead and use the other container and pour it in here. You might have to get some out depending on the container that you're using. And I need to return a little bit of this back into the big container, since it does have a little bit of cracks or openings on the side. I'm going to go ahead and pour the second one in here. And the idea is once it dries, you should have a bouncy material. So you should be able to bounce. I am going to show you an example of one that I did earlier so that you can see what the finished product will look like. Now, yours might look different than mine, so that's okay. You know, this is, I'm using the red food coloring. You may be using a different type of color, but the idea is for you to see how mixing the solutions together uh, combines the molecules of one substance with the other and creates a new substance. So again, it looks like I'm gonna have to take some out of here because it's falling down. Okay. Here's a mixed sample of when the mixture is already in the container. Here's the second one. And if you recall that aluminum foil that we have, I'm going to try to see if we pour the rest of it in here, and we're going to store it or keep it for 24 hours. We're going to come back again to see if there are any differences between the substance that is sitting on the aluminum foil without a container and the one that was poured into the mold. Earlier we talked a little bit about making predictions. This would be like a great time, you know, where you can make predictions in terms of what do you think is going to happen with the substance that is going to sit in the aluminum foil versus the one that is in the mold. Like what I mean is, you know, how is the mold going to help, you know, the new substance take a new shape that it didn't have before. So I'm going to pour some of it in here, and pour most of it in here. All right. All right, so that concludes today's experiment. Let me show you an example of the new substance 24 hours after it has been drying, or it has been at least, you know, 24 hours sitting in the mold. All right. All right, guys, so here's an example of one of the balls that was made after 24 hours. We're gonna test to see if it bounces. So I'm gonna just, you know, flip the plastic container that we were using and see if it stays the same. Or if you guys remember when we started the experiment, the materials that we had here included a powder substance, which was the baking soda, the glue that was sticky. So let's see, you know, if it bounces. So here we go. I do have two examples. So here's one and here's the other. It might be, once it dries, you might find yourself that it may be a little bit hard taking it out of the container. So you might have to use one of the popsicle sticks to scoop it out. And then once it's scooped out, you might have to press with your hands so that you can give it a more roundish shape, such as the one that we see here. You know, they're not perfectly round, but they are in a different state, so they are solid. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know, test out if both of them bounce. So here we go. Okay. Oh, and the other thing, so if for whatever reason yours ends up not bouncing, that's okay. You can, you know, try the experiment again. If you change the ratios or the amount of water or baking soda that you are using, that may affect how you know, the reaction happens and whether it is going to hold its shape after the 24-hour period. So, all right, so I'm going to try two things. I'm going to first try to bounce it onto this foam material. This one might absorb the impact, so it might not bounce here. So that's why we're going to be using, the container. I'm going to try to bounce it on the inside, and then I'm going to try to bounce it on the outside. Okay, ready? So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to bounce it. I'm going to drop it from this height. Okay, so you can see that it is bouncing. You see the bigger one also bouncing. It's not, it's not like a ball, but you can see that it does go from one area to the other, and it bounces pretty good. Okay. You can also see or hear that it makes a very solid or very hard sound when it drops down. So you can see maybe if I pour from here. Yep. So you can hear. Now let's try if we bounce it in here in the plastic. Oh yeah, so you can definitely see how the plastic makes impact with the object. And you can see completely that that one bounced even off the table. There's another one. Let's see if I can retrieve the other one real quick. Give me a second. All right, so going once, twice. Yep, that was a good bounce. There's another one. There's another one. See if I can just bounce both of them at the same time. What do you know? This one has a rounder, a more round shape than the other one. Seems to be bouncing a little better. You see that in the container and also without the container. If we had a camera, we could see how high it's bouncing as opposed to the one that is a little heavier. So now let's see if we flip this one around and try it. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, you see bouncing pretty good. Yep, it's bouncing. All right, that concludes today's experiment. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to continue your exploration at home, don't forget to get a library card that gives you access to tons of resources. And if you'd like to watch other videos like this, you can visit our library webpage, www.smcl.org. I'd like to remind you also about the Summer Learning Challenge, which started on June 1st. You'll have an opportunity to you have an opportunity where you can earn a chance to win $1,000 scholarship, and details can be found at the website www.summerlearners.org. Thank you so much, and again, this is Mr. E, and we'll see you on the next one.